thanks for doing this, first of all. Um,
That's
I
okay.
appreciate you taking the
Thanks for
time
having
out.
me.
Oh, my pleasure. Um, so just before we started recording, you told us that it's -20 in Canada, and I
Yes.
had
hmm
incorrectly assumed you were talking Fahrenheit and was trying to convert it, and you said no, that's Celsius. Um,
hmm
had you ever seen? There's no snow in Australia really, apart from like mountains, is there?
No, there's like two spots that you can go that have snow in the winter, but it's like it's nowhere near the snow that you get
Yeah,
here. It's like yeah, it's nowhere near as thick
it's like
or
a
as
light
heavy.
dusting. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's at the very top of a mountain.
Okay. So had you been around? Like, had you ever made a snowman or anything?
I've been to the snow in Australia. So I have done like your
Yeah, yeah.
typical snow activities. Um, but I've never seen snow like just around houses and on streets and like this is just next level.
Yeah, I saw a video. Paul Tremblay put up a video there last week of him. He has an ice rink in his back garden every like winter
Mm,
for ice skating and stuff, and him and his kids are clearing it off. But it was like it was like a pic. He had a picture up and it was like before, and then he had a video of clearing it off, and it was honestly like 6 foot deep. Like the bit that he was digging
yeah,
out, like it's crazy. It's like we get snow here, but it's like nothing compared to that. And even if
yeah. Even like pushing like your shopping
yeah, I
trolley
saw that
through the
video last
snow.
night. That was funny.
Yeah, I like didn't even comprehend that that's what or when you like have to scrape your car off.
Yeah.
I was like, what
Or
the?
find your car and then scrape it
Yeah.
off. Yeah. Where are
hmm
you? Are you renting there, or how? Like, where are you living?
I'm with my
Okay,
coach at the moment, so Michelle. I'm just bunking with her,
that's cool.
just so I can at least get shown around and not be completely by myself in a new country. And I don't have a car either, so she's been obviously driving me around and
Yeah, that's cool.
taking good care of me.
Um, was this always the plan? Like, when did moving to Canada become? 'Cause I think, like in my head, when I heard that you were moving, I was like, oh, this must be like post games, having spent time with Michelle and Pat, and that kind of environment must have like
hmm
spurred things on. Is that the case, or was it always in your mind?
Yeah, probably it was definitely after the games when I realized sort of how much more opportunities and um, things you have over here. Even I'd never trained in person with a coach before. So that time right before the games, it was only like a week or so that I had with Michelle and um, Pat and other training partners. I was like, is this what people are doing all the time? Like, is this is a massive advantage. Like I'm just slogging it out by myself, like no coaches, nothing. But to have people in person helping and like pushing you and all of that, I was like, this is just a no brainer. Like this has to, the next step for me has to be, you know, at least having spent some time with a coach and just like fine tuning a few things that I'd never had the opportunity to do before. So from that point onwards, so like games after games time, I was like, well, obviously I'd love to stay near family and I'd love to stay in Australia and just be comfortable. But I think for me to take that next step of where I want to get to, I needed to be uncomfortable. I needed change. And um, yeah, here I find myself in Canada.
Um, and I was reading an article about you, and you were always active. So you played like,
hmm
was it volleyball and or netball? Was it?
Um, yeah, it's netball and
Okay.
basketball were my two main sports. Netball, for those of you that don't know, like I don't know where else. It's like Australia, England. Do you guys have netball?
No, I'd be familiar with it from England, like from Great Britain in the Olympics and
Yeah,
stuff.
it's I thought it was like a general Commonwealth sport, but apparently no one knows about it. But it's sort of like basketball,
Yeah.
just a little bit like less contacts ish, a little bit more like rules in terms of where you can go on the court, things like that. But yeah, netball, basketball were my two main sports. But I have four brothers, so growing up, sport was just a general part of our family dynamic. And instead of like being inside and playing games, it was outside playing cricket in the backyard, football.
And
Like,
what age are your brothers?
I've got one who's older. He's 26, 25, 26. And then the rest are sort of like younger. The youngest is 16.
Okay. And what was that like leaving them?
Um, like it's hard because, we have got a very close family, but I also live with two of them. So it was sort of nice to get a little bit of space. Um, we get on each other's nerves a little bit, but no, I do miss them terribly. So
Yeah.
it was hard.
So like basketball, netball, I suppose they both have a ball in common and a net of some description, but they're also team sports.
Yes.
So why not pursue like what like it seems like a big shift to be like I'm just gonna go to like apart from golf, like probably one of the most individual sports you can do. What brought that on?
Um, I don't really know. Like, I stopped playing them both after I left high school, so year 12. Started university, and studying became my main focus. So apart from studying, I was just going to the gym on the side, just a regular like Globo gym. But I got bored of that pretty quickly, coming from team sports, and um, it like my competitive nature just wasn't getting the attention that it
Mm.
needed. Um, and a few people had mentioned CrossFit to me and said that they think I'd like it, and I'd seen it a little bit, but I was like, oh, that seems a bit like, I don't know, a bit culty. Um, and put it off, and then I was so sick of the gym that I was like, you know what, I'm just going to try this. Called around for a few gyms, and one of them, I just went to the first one that responded. I tried it, and I didn't love it straight away. Um, I was used to doing a lot of like I would superset everything, and I would train for like 2 hours. Like I was at the Globo gym, so I wasn't when I went to CrossFit, and you do like a long warm up, do some like PVC lifting, and then the workout's like 10 minutes, and you're like standing around, in between. I was like, what is this? Like I don't really feel like I'm doing much. So I went back to the Globo gym, waited till my membership expired. And then eventually I went back to the CrossFit after my membership expired. And I think over time, my competitive nature was just like wanting to do the next thing, and just it hooked me that way. And then this was around the time that Tia won her first
Yeah.
game, so like July 2017. So seeing an Aussie, I didn't know you could compete in CrossFit. So seeing an Aussie compete, and then just like the emotion that she showed when she won, after seeing that, I was like, that's what I want to do. And then from that point on, I pretty much dedicated my life to being better and competing. And 4 years later, here I am.
And so leaving, did you finish university around the same time you started CrossFit then?
No, I was only in my second year
Okay.
of university when I found CrossFit, and it was definitely challenging being a full-time student. I studied physiotherapy, so it was pretty high demand for like even to be on campus. I was in at university every day, and sometimes I was on clinics, so in hospitals and working in clinics. So I would go in and train from like 5 till 7 in the morning, go home, go to uni, and then um, come back, train again at night. So it was a rough slog, but I knew I wanted to finish uni before, like, I needed to get my degree.
Yeah.
And at no point did I want to, like, I mean, I did want to give it away, but I knew in the long term it was going to be smart for me to finish and have that there if I ever needed it.
And apart from those people who suggested CrossFit to you originally, was there like a general confusion about you like deciding like, okay, I'm going all in on this sport that like probably a good few people wouldn't have heard of, and then especially going like so deep all in to be like, right, this is my full-time thing now? Were people like surprised by it, or
Yeah.
is that like part of your character, do you think?
Um, I think it is definitely part of my character. Like, when I decide to do something, I go 100%. And if I really want to do it, like, I'll get it done. Um, but it was a bit of a concern, I think, probably for my parents as well. I went to a pretty expensive private school that they'd put me through, and then I was at university and I was studying physio, and for them to, this was all as well like when COVID hit, and I was still just like, I chose not to work as a physio and I was just going to train and coach. And then COVID hit, and there was so much uncertainty. um I think it was hard for them, and I questioned it multiple times of like, is this the right thing to do? Like, is CrossFit even going to be a thing?
Mm.
um I'm just like slonging it away in my garage, like everything's shut. Am I ever even going to be good enough? Like, those thoughts constantly just roll around in your head. But at the end of the day, I knew it's what made me happy. It was my passion. And it's what I wanted to do. So I just stuck at it. And once I got, my parents hadn't really seen me compete. So once, like, competitions were back on and I got to compete at Torian, they saw that, and I think they realized, they were like, oh, like, she's serious about this, and she can hopefully like make this her career.
But that must have been such a release, like for all of you then, if they were like, whether they were like doubting it out loud or just like silently in their head, like watching you head off into the garage again. Like when this, because Torian was quite a show, like it was impressive to look at. The like audience seemed to love it. Like it just looked like an impressive event. So then that's cool, because especially if throughout your career so far in the sport they hadn't really been able to see any of that kind of stuff. So then to see a good show first off, and then to see you perform so well, and like it must have been, I'd say, I'm sure you were relieved, I'm sure you were excited, I'm sure you were everything else about like qualifying, but even for them they must have been like, oh thank fuck she's actually good at it, it's not just like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. She's not just like a spud. But no, it was, for me, I went into the season, so the Open, I didn't know where I stood. The previous year, I think I came like maybe like 40th in Australia. So my goal for the season was to make semis, which was top 30. So I went into the Open just, trying to do as best as I could. And I think to come out of that in one of the toppest, like, higher level spots, it wasn't relief, because I still didn't feel confident that I was going to make semis, even after coming like third in Australia in the Open. I never felt like I was just going to be handed, like, just easily going to make semis. But it was definitely a sign, like, that I had been doing the right things, and all of that work was worth it. But I think for that, my parents were sort of, and people around me were relieved. Yeah.
Um, that same article I read said that you had done one sanctional before COVID hit, we'll say. And I
Yeah.
think you said in it, what sanction was that?
It was the Australian CrossFit
Okay,
Championship,
yeah.
so ACC. That was in March of 2020.
Okay.
So
Just before the shit
literally
hit the fan, yeah.
COVID hit pretty much like the week after.
Um, but I was struck by something you said in it. So you said that you finished sixth and you were surprised to have finished sixth. Um,
Yeah.
and then similar with the Open, that you had done well in a couple of events and that you were surprised that you did well in a couple of events. And like
Hmm.
you just mentioned there that your aim was to finish in the semi-final spots. You obviously like way surpassed that. Like, was there a point during the season, or was it after the games? Was it in the middle of the games? Like, is there a point where any of that surprise washed away and was replaced by like a sense of belonging, or are you like, have you reached that yet? Are you still looking for that, or like, because you seem more confident just from watching you in interviews and listening to you compared to what I was reading when you said it. Obviously you can attribute tone when you're reading something, but you sounded like you were
Hmm.
almost like, oh, I'm just happy to be here, isn't it great? Whereas now you seem a bit more like, oh no, I'm like here to compete and like, achieve something.
It's probably something that I have struggled with is feeling like I belong on the competition floor and accepting where I am in the sport. I definitely did not expect when I competed at ACC, like that was my first major competition. So I was sort of, I thought, I just didn't want to come last. Like that was my goal. And then moving forward to like semis and even after qualifying for the games, I still didn't feel like I was meant to be there. Like I didn't have that confidence and that belief in myself that um, I was I was good enough to be among the people that I was competing
Hmm.
against. Um, I'd say even after the games, it sort of got worse for me. My confidence, um, I didn't. When I say I don't have the confidence to be out there, I don't. I don't feel like I should be out there. But in saying that, I still expect myself to perform well.
Like, as in, like,
So
you're not
uh,
afraid of the workouts, but you're just maybe like, is there someone else that should be here, kind of thing? Like, is there a like a, I don't know, like a Cara or someone who should be here, and that kind of thing, is it?
yeah, like you do compare yourself to other athletes, um, which doesn't help heaps with the confidence. And I mean, you're comparing to what they're doing on social
Yeah.
media and things like that. So you're always comparing to the highlights. Um, and even after the games, it wasn't. I didn't think I had my best performance. So leading in to sort of the off season, I didn't feel real confident. And so it was good for me, obviously, just doing Waterpalooza. I went in no expectations, just wanting to gain some more experience. And um, I literally didn't think my fitness was where it showed to be at Waterpalooza. So it was good for me to like get a little bit more confidence and feel like I did belong out there and that I've got a good base leading into the season.
How or when did you start working with Michelle?
I started working with her in like June or July of 2020, so it's been about a year and a half now.
And how did that come about?
So the gym that I was training at in Adelaide, they were following the affiliate programming, so the DECA affiliate programming. And then so the classes that I was doing were DECA. So then I just ended up when I decided to start competing in CrossFit, I started doing the competitors programming. which worked in with class as well, because you do similar or the same workouts, and then you've just got a few
Hmm.
extras off to the side. Um, and so when I did ACC at the start of 2020, Michelle was over with James Newbury. Um, so I met her then, and because I was following the competitors program, like I introduced myself, and we met then. Um, and then just like a little bit further down the track, um, she had a position open up, and um, yeah, I wanted to take my training to the next level, and that seemed like the right thing to do, and yeah, jumped on it.
And then, so like you were following like she was programming for you and coaching you, and you were like, I guess, training outside of class and then at home. Is that fair?
Yes, like as in prior to ACC, or
Since, like prior to moving to Canada, we'll say.
yes, yeah. So she was like doing all my programming, and um, I would do that, yeah, back in Adelaide
And
if
how
I had
often would
any
you be in touch?
questions or
Like,
anything.
was there like calls, or was it just like kind of texting back and forth, or was there like a scheduled like weekly thing to like chat about everything that had happened the previous week and was coming up or whatever?
We chat like very regularly usually through message. But if there's anything that I want to chat to her about, she's more than willing to jump on a call. Um, but yeah, I'd say we'd speak pretty much every day.
And then, because I'm curious, like it's like people go all in, but this seems
Hmm.
like really all in to be like, okay, bye Australia. So I'm trying to, in my head, I'm trying to think, like, is there something about Michelle or the way she coached, or obviously you trusted the programming because you'd seen it at work in your affiliate, and you'd seen like members of your community
Hmm.
improve, and you obviously understand the coaching or the programming of it and understand how it's working, whatever. And then you were coached, you did the competitive things that adds to that, and then you were coached by her, so obviously you get to know her, and I guess you get to trust her and whatever. But like, to the average person, it's a huge leap to be like,
Hmm.
I'm texting you and we're chatting about programming, versus like, hey, I'm actually going to move country and like to work with you. And I know, like you mentioned the fact that like the training partners and stuff at the games, and that obviously was a spur to that, to be like, oh shit, like I'm obviously missing a trick with this. But like, is there something specifically about her that gave you the impetus to be like, okay, this is something that I need to pursue, like to actually like leave to pursue it?
Um, Probably not anything about her specifically that made me move, but I just obviously respect her so much as a past athlete and a person, um, and we get along really well. It was more so seeing what in-person coaching could do after experiencing it at the games and post games, um, that made me think about coming over and spending time with her. Um, and that's not to say, like, I think doing like doing a program, um, like off-site, like back in Australia, um, that's that's worked for me leading up. I qualified for the games, and that's fine. And I'm not going to be here forever, but for me, just the next step I thought would be to get some in-person coaching, work on a few things that I needed help to work on, um, and yeah, I respect and trust Michelle like massively. So yeah, it just seemed like the right thing to do.
Yeah, I guess if you're looking for 1%, or like the extra bits of percentages, like that's obviously a huge piece of it.
Hmm.
And then, do you think it makes a difference that she's done it, like that she's that she was a competitor in numerous different ways, like team, individual, everything? Do you think that that makes a difference to how she coaches?
I think it's not essential that a coach has to be a past games athlete, but I think it definitely helps in the sense of if you're us as competitors, when we're going through, it can be a tough moment or it can be a good moment. She's usually, majority of the time, experienced it or something similar. So she knows what you're feeling and like can deal with it a little bit better. And also just being female as well, we've got that like good connection. And yeah, I don't think it's essential that a coach needs to be a past games athlete, but I think it definitely has its advantages.
Yeah. Wadapalooza then, so like you just a sublime weekend really. And you mentioned there at the start that you kind of weren't really sure where you stood, like heading into it, and you know it was a bit of a litmus test, I suppose. Were you caught off guard then when you found yourself like sitting on top? Were you like, this is unexpected, and like, did that feed into your previous feelings of like, you know, surprise and not really being sure what's going on, or was it more confidence building being on top?
Oh, it was a complete surprise. I literally, before the first event, I said to Michelle, I was like, I can't do this. Like, I need to pull out. I'm not ready. Um, like, even though Waterpalooza isn't part of the season and it's not like I don't need to be at my fittest for anything. It was still just, I just felt a bit scared and fearful that I wasn't where I needed to be. So to win the like an event even was just like not even on my radar, um, which has helped. I think now I do have a little bit more confidence in where I'm at and where I'm going, knowing that like I'm just at the start of the season and we have a lot more work to do, but it's definitely provided a little bit more confidence in my base now, um, which is, I think it's exactly what I needed.
I've interviewed Pat before, and he's very like, he talks a lot about like being taking in having information available and knowing what to take in and knowing what to discard, like knowing what's important and what isn't, and that's a skill that you kind of only learn through experience, really. Because at start, you might fuck up and like listen to everything and look at everything and worry about everything, whereas eventually you come to realize that like there might be 10 athletes on the floor, but there's maybe only one you need to be concerned with, or you know, as well as yourself. And I was talking to my wife after Wadapalooza, and like I was cognizant of the fact that you're like, what are you, 23?
Yeah.
And I was like, if you're going in to having gone into events previously, not being sure where you were going to be, and then finishing strongly and thinking, oh, that was a surprise, or oh, I didn't expect that. Like, it must be difficult to be thrust into first place, or to thrust yourself into first place, I guess. And then does that add pressure? Does it change the scope of the weekend, where it's like, I'm just going in to test myself and see where I am, versus like, oh fuck, I'm in first place now, I need to hold on to this all weekend, like there's a long time to go until the end. And then is it hard to stomach when that doesn't happen, or are you in a position, like Pat was saying, of being able to say like, I don't give a fuck that I'm sixth. Like, I finished, you know, like I don't care where I finish. I know that I gave my absolute best in this event. I know that I, whatever, you know, like that. Are you able to compartmentalize it like that? Or is that still something that you're kind of working towards?
I think it's definitely a work in progress. Once I had a taste of first, even in just one event, that became like my new my new expectation. I didn't want anything
Yeah.
else. So it was definitely like, I'm not gonna lie, it was devastating to drop in. I think it's much harder dropping on a leaderboard than it is to
Mm.
climb. Um, but in saying that, like, I'm not, it's not like it's my seat. There's nothing that's impacted my season going forward. It's not like it's a game spot that I've missed out on. Um, and I think, as Pat's probably said, like, it is a thing that comes with experience of dealing with these sorts of situations better. And that was part of the reason why I did Waterpalooza, was to gain as much of that experience as I could, because I already feel like dealing with that situation, which I hadn't dealt with before, has just added another tool in my toolbox of like what to do moving forward. And that's not to say that I'm going to be perfect next time, but at least it's not a brand new feeling.
Did you enjoy like Miami in general? Like, was it like, are you looking back at it as a positive experience, or what, like, was it balanced, or how did it feel?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I loved Miami. I think Miami sort of reminds me a little bit of the Gold Coast back home. So it's a bit of like a
Mm.
um, party city, and it was warm and fun and just like a massive party. In saying that, like I get terribly nervous for any competition, so it was still um, a little bit nerve wracking for me. But I definitely would love to do it in the coming years. I think it's a good time in the season to sort of see where you're at leading in to the rest of the season without having too much pressure. Um, but yeah, I loved Miami. It was great fun.
Yeah, it's definitely. I feel like it's definitely a party city in general, and then when like Khan and James and a few others are around, it probably wraps it up a bit as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Um, what are your plans then? So like you're in Canada now. Have you planned as far as, because obviously I suppose you don't really know what's going to happen with semi-finals, as in it's kind of a bit of an unknown quantity of like, will they let people do what they did last year, or will they change it? And then it seems
Yeah,
like things are
so
changing country slowly, like country by country. I know, like, say they announced here today that basically all of the restrictions that were here up until now are just going to be gone over the weekend.
wow.
So apart from like you need your vaccine cert or whatever to travel, but like I know they changed the rules in Australia where if you're vaccinated you don't have to quarantine, and like they seem to be changing things. So
Mhm.
it's kind of, it's hard. You don't want to try and guess what's going to happen and then like be disappointed or whatever. So are you planning for
Yeah.
both eventualities, or have you planned that far ahead yet?
Yeah, I've definitely looked into it, and at this stage, after speaking to CrossFit, I'm gonna have to head back for Torian.
Okay.
I think they're doing, yeah, I think they're making it by citizenship again,
Okay.
um, which is completely fine. Like, as now that Australia's opened up and you don't have to quarantine, it's not as
Mm.
severe of like a implication. Um, and I mean, like, Torian is an amazing competition. The atmosphere there was crazy. We don't have many competitions in Australia, New Zealand region.
Mm.
So when we do compete, the whole community gets around us, which is just amazing.
Yeah. Um. So we'll just say like, perfect season happens, and you do what you need to do in the Open, do what you need to do in quarterfinals, head home for Torian, qualify for Torian. Are you straight back to Quebec then after that until the games, or are you literally just planning? Okay, let's see if I make semi-finals, and then we'll make a plan then.
Um, I have thought a little bit about it, and like, in a perfect world, if I qualify for the games, I think it would be smart for me to come back over, just because it's the trip over from Australia is it's pretty
Mm.
brutal, like with time difference, and I think it definitely rocked me around last year. So coming over a little bit before, and I think Montreal is a very similar climate and time zone to Madison, so it would make sense. Um, but nothing's set in stone. I'm just like thinking about possibilities. But I think in this day and age, like, you can't really plan anything
Yeah.
properly. But I'm definitely all going to plan. I would love to come back over and do a bit of games prep over here.
Someone who I tend to listen to when they talk about permutations and predictions and stuff is Brian Friend, and he
Hmm.
had mentioned how prior to the games last year and prior to like Wadapalooza that you were like something of an unknown quantity, I guess, where like if everyone who should have competed at Wadapalooza or at Torian did compete, that the amount of spaces available and the caliber of athlete that would have been there would have made it very difficult. Like someone would have been losing out somewhere. And I was kind of thinking of that, like, are you thinking about those kind of things? Are you thinking about like, well, if I have to go back, that means Tia has to go back. That means like Jamie probably has to go back. And like, you know, you've mentioned how Tia was like part of the reason that you got into the sport, and obviously she's an incredible athlete, and like even when she's not fucking training CrossFit, she still wins like rogue, you know, like just ridiculous. But like, it's a stacked continent, like it's ridiculous. And then this small amount of spaces, like if we are sitting here in, we'll say January 2023, and we're looking back on the 2022 season, what's a successful season for you? Like, are you putting like, are you expecting the absolute best outcome? Are you like, or are you just kind of hoping for that, but maybe expecting something different? Like, cause it's similar to last year, I guess, but it's also going to be totally different because I suppose you're a different athlete, you have a different mentality, but then there's also going to be different competitors in the pool.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think we've got a pretty stacked region, and I think we got a little bit gypped with 3 spots, but I mean, I've got no control over that, so I can only do my best and, you know, hope for the best possible outcome. In terms of expecting the best result, I think I don't expect to make the games. I don't think that's a given at all. We've got phenomenal athletes. I mean, past athletes that have been to the games, but then also like people that haven't made the games yet that are still like amazing CrossFitters. So I think it's going to be like a massive fight for those 3 positions. Before Waterpalooza, I would have like certainty just like counted myself out. I mean, we've got like Tia, Cara, and Jamie Simmons. Like they're arguably they're definitely in the top at least 10 in the world. But after sort of Waterpalooza and just thinking about it, like I'm not counting myself out at all. I love to compete and I love to fight, so I'm going to, you know, do everything I can to still get one of those spots. And if it doesn't happen, you know, it's not meant to be, but if it does, that's the goal, is to make it back to the game. So I'll be ecstatic. So
yeah, that's great. I love that you're not afraid to say, like, because it's easy to be like, oh, I don't give a shit who else is competing or whatever. It's easy to say those words, like, but I think to acknowledge the fact that, like, okay, yeah, there's 3 of arguably, like, you know, definitely top 12 or top 10 of all time female CrossFitters in your region makes it, like, you know, difficult. But I suppose, yeah, like, you know, you can only be the best by beating the best. So, like, you know, the better competition is only going to make you into a better athlete as well, I guess.
That's it. And like, you don't want to, you know, you want to make the games knowing that you versed the best you possibly could. So I think there's going to be so many of us gunning for those top 3 positions, and we're all going to do our best. And I think like it's going to make us all better athletes no matter what. So yeah.
Do you see like training as your job?
Yes.
Do you enjoy work?
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
So I'm always curious about it, because like sometimes if I know I'm going to train, I'm a bit like, oh fuck, and like I know I'm not training to near the intensity or like the regularity that games athletes are. But it's something that I think about sometimes, is like, you know, sometimes I have to go to, well, every day I have to go to work, and like there are days where I'm like, oh fuck this, you know, like when you're leaving for work. So I always wonder, are there days where games athletes are like, could not be fucking arsed, and it's so easy to not go then, because it's like, it's literally just you. Like, you might have, maybe Velner might be sitting on the assault bike going like, where the fuck is she? But like, that's just literally the only person that's going to notice you're not there. Like,
I think Oh, I would have more days than not where I'm like, oh, like this is this is hard. But in saying that, like it's just discipline. Like you have the goal and you know that it's gonna like move you towards that goal. So you just do it. I mean, it's some days you don't enjoy it, but then the days that you do it just makes it all worth it.
Mm. I've had people on before who've been to the games and they've either been there once and haven't been back, or they've been there multiple times. And a lot of them talk about their first year at the games being a bit like like uh, kind of like a waste opportunity, where like they were there and they were just so happy to be there that they were like, oh, this is amazing. And then afterwards were like, fuck, like why didn't I go a bit darker on that workout, or why didn't I push a bit harder on that one, like, or I missed some chances to, you know, I like almost showing other athletes too much respect, or showing the occasion too much respect. Is there any of that from last year for you, or are there things like similar to that that you want a chance to change this year?
Um, I don't think it impacted my effort at all. I didn't I don't think I could go out on the floor and just be happy to be there. Like I just, when I'm competing, I just flick a switch and I'm full competitive mode. Like I just want to win, and there's just nothing else that I can do to like counteract that. But I think the first year is hard because it's all such a new experience. Particularly like I'd never been to the US or traveled that far alone before. So it was just trying to grasp all the new experiences in turn with like competing and trying to do my best, and like it was a lot. And this next year I think I'm just at an advantage. If I make it back to the games, I'm at an advantage over those that are having their first
Mm.
year, just because it's such a, some things are just like it's just a shock, a surprise. Like even the way that, you know, there's not much time between events, and um, where you're like taken, you're sort of like backstage for a while and you're lining up for ages, and all those little things that you don't really know how they work. That next year, it's not as much of a shock. So you're just prepared for it. Um, so I wouldn't say that I didn't go out there wanting every single workout. I went as hard as I could. Um, but you're sort of just learning like what to do
Mm.
in a sense. Yeah.
Um, I've heard a lot of people talking about the open, like say games, people with games aspirations, talking about how the open is just like, you know, you might taper up a little bit for it and, you know, ramp things up, hit the open, and then that the real focus starts coming like maybe even after quarterfinals. That like, I think a lot of people are confident now that they know how to get through the open, and that people won't, say games level competitors won't necessarily be slogging it out for the prize money that's available in the open. They'll have their focus set somewhere else. Do you think, is that true of the majority of the top athletes, or do you think that there still is there still is like a kind of a feather in your cap about saying like, I won an open workout, or I won the open?
Um, I mean, I can't speak on behalf of everyone else, but I would definitely every step in the like season, you always, you know, you're not purposely going out there and just like fudging a workout and not giving your best effort. Um, but there's definitely not, I guess, the pressure
Mm.
from the open that you would usually see. And I personally think it's great that, you know, the open is a fun um, community experience. Like, you know, your top athletes are going to, you know, ideally make it through. 10% is a fair
Yeah.
range. And it gives, you know, the rest of the community a chance to get involved and sort of test themselves. And, you know, yeah, your top athletes are going to move through and they're going to still give their best effort, but it's not that same pressure of, oh, I'm going to qualify for the games out of this. Let's like do the workout 6 times.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, we've finished with a quick fire. Um, So they're all either or. So ski or row,
Row.
bike or run,
Ooh. Bike.
snatch or clean,
Clean.
gymnastics or cardio,
Cardio. 100% cardio.
snow or sand.
Sand.
Well, look, thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate taking the time out. It's been great getting to know you a little bit, and I think it's refreshing. You've a refreshing level of honesty when it comes to, you know, your insecurities or previous insecurities, I guess, largely about competing and, you know, yourself as a competitor. And I think you've proved in Miami that you belong on the floor. I'm looking forward to seeing you flick that competitive switch more often. So best of luck with the season and in Canada. And yeah, I'll definitely be keeping an eye. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Cheers.